Welcome. You are listening to Point One, Beyond Human Reality podcast with your host, author
S.S. Lopez and
Red Foster. That's me.
This podcast is a complement to the book with the same title, Beyond Human Reality, an innocent look into existence and the potential of being human.
Can I just clarify at this point that you can still appreciate, understand, or even participate in this podcast, even if you haven't read the book yet? Also, maybe it's a good time to say that this is kind of a hybrid episode. Is it an intro? Is it episode 1? We couldn't decide, but we will tell you what the podcast is about and who it's for. So, Sergio, let's get straight into it. What can listeners expect to hear?
In short, the show is about being human. It's about understanding ourselves better and all the things at play that makes for this experience we call life. If you look at the average Joe, and by the average Joe, I mean all of us, 99.9% of human beings, we are truly convinced that in our highly developed industrialized societies, we live, number 1, rational, number 2, truthful, and number 3, productive lives.
Yeah, I think we even kind of take some level of pride in just how productive we are. And unfortunately, there's this tendency to attach self-value to productivity.
Absolutely. And not only that, we really believe that our experiences are unique and special. Added to that, we believe that satisfaction of our desires is the product of conscious choices and our perception of the level of control we have in our own existence. And somehow we are convinced that making certain choices and controlling certain aspects of our lives, we believe that we can reach a permanent state of happiness and satisfaction, even label ourselves successful.
So from what you were saying, I understand that the belief in this level of control and absolute freedom of choice is somehow erroneous, that somehow we don't live productive and thoughtful lives, at least not to the extent that we want to believe we do?
Exactly. There are so many factors that influence our lives in ways that we cannot even begin to understand.
Such as?
Well, things such as unconscious and conscious psychological trauma, ambivalence, polarization, very much the it word right now. Everyone is talking about polarization in the American elections.
Mm-hmm. And we don't even truly seem to attach the same meaning to that word, right?
Exactly. These factors that I mentioned above, along with others such as chronic emotional distress and physical pain, are setting off what I call the master caution alarm. But here is the thing. We seem capable of ignoring all of these just fine and cope with life. But at some point, it is my belief all this is going to catch up with us.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe it already has. I think that is why there is this sense of dread and fear or rage, guilt, frustration when we look at people around us and in ourselves, right?
Yes, among others. These are just symptoms of the deep pathological state we are suffering.
Mm-hmm. So am I right in saying that Point One podcast is about tackling some of these issues and shedding some light on them?
Yes, but like everything in life, it is not that simple. Unfortunately for us, objective reality or the real source of everything we experience is out of reach due to our intellectual limitation. But if we pay enough attention, observe hard enough, and understand ourselves better, we not only understand the world we live in, but how the whole universe works too.
Mm-hmm.
With 0.1 Beyond Human Reality, we will go down the rabbit hole looking at our 99.9% artificially created realities and the obstacles we face while living completely unaware of our whole vital experience in the world. Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, I believe that we are one expression of the totality of the universe.
That is a beautiful yet very daunting thought. So, Sergio, why Point One? What is Point One?
When we fully understand ourselves, we are in the realm of a process I call the 0.1%. If we look at our DNA, for example, we know for certain that 99.9% of any two humans' genome is identical. But because our genome is so large, a seemingly trivial 0.1% variation allows for a huge diversity we see in humans. Thanks to about 3 million variants of mutations in the average human genome, there are millions of possible combinations that make millions of differences possible. And as a result, everyone is genetically unique.
Wow, and that's just 0.1% that makes for such incredible diversity.
Exactly. Just look at chimps, for example. It's just 2% of difference between us. And look at us. We are pretty different, right?
Yeah.
And it is in this realm of the 0.1 where the millions of possibilities available to us reveal themselves, and we can release the endless potential we possess as human beings in our intercorrelated environment. We become existentially aware. We can be the creators of our own experiences with our own self-made choices. And as a result, we can take full responsibility for ourselves and those around us. We can begin to serve others and give meaning to our lives, which I believe ultimately is what we want.
I agree, yeah. And the show will help people understand this and perhaps even guide them towards finding this kind of meaning, or at least be a guide on their journey. Wow, this is quite an ambitious task for a podcast, but I suppose this is not going to happen in episode 1. Presumably, you are going to break this down into bite-sized chunks for people like myself who might find this all a bit overwhelming.
Absolutely, for sure. It is not as overwhelming as it looks, but the podcast will cover a wide range of topics from biology and physics to history, religion, geography, philosophy, psychology, economics, politics, you name it, computer science, even popular culture that I love. And we are going to talk even about memes, although I'm not as good as you are, Bad Luck Brian and company. But I would say that the most important, or the cornerstone of the book and the podcast, is the perspective on different aspects of reality, or indeed the different kinds of realities we live in.
Wait, what? You mean that there is more than one type of reality? Well, I guess I knew that since you just mentioned objective reality, and I know that there's a little something called virtual reality, but more than that?
Indeed. Over the next shows, we will talk about 5 main realities. And what's more, we will discuss at length why I argue that these are completely artificially created.
Okay.
The 5 realities we are going to talk about going to be rational reality, deep subjective reality, subjective reality, intersubjective reality, and virtual reality. Just to give a hint or an idea what they are about, rational reality is related to rational thinking in science, natural laws, and the language scientists used called mathematics. In deep subjective reality, we are going to talk about our unconscious biological processes, for example.
So here you mean things like chemical processes in the body, hormonal changes, etc.
Exactly. And how all these processes influence the way we feel, the way we emote, the way we behave, and the moods we are in every day, and how we finally take decisions, right? We also take a look at subjective reality, which is the area where realities become nearly infinite, as each and every person has their own conscious experience. This is the theory that every single person has her or his own reality. We are talking about narratives here.
Yeah. Our personal narratives, the thing that drives our life.
Exactly. 2 people at the same party. How was the party? 2 completely different stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And then we would move on intersubjective reality. And the easiest way to describe this reality is if we take our conscious experiences or our personal narratives in the form of collective narratives is we put together all these stories and we shape what we call culture.
Yeah.
And culture is going to give us the way we act with money, with our economy, the way we make social decisions in our politics systems, the way we deal with spirituality in our religions, and so on and so forth. And
collective narratives, yeah.
Correct, collective narratives. And finally, last but not least, virtual reality. That has to do with technology, digital technology. These very little thing that we put in our pockets, for example, that it's called cell phone. Mobile
and it's
phone,
becoming more and more prominent in our lives, right? And the applications of virtual reality is becoming so ingrained in our every moment, in our every experience nowadays.
Absolutely. It's turning into a moderator, it's turning into an interface. It's the part that we miss in ourselves. So we don't leave home without your phone?
I feel lost if I do.
In my opinion, each one of these realities presents a different angle of the human experience. And by digging into these topics, we hope to offer you, the listener, some perspective on human experience.
So the podcast then is really for everyone and anyone who is experiencing some kind of existential crisis, or large or small, or maybe just people who have questions, or perhaps just want to understand the environment or how the environment around them shapes them.
Yes, I would say that if you can identify with people who are consciously, but above all, unconsciously tolerating abuse, and they go through life lying, giving up control of their lives, if you are the kind of person that is relying on others for answers and constantly avoid new experiences, and if you spend your days avoiding people, and most importantly, if you are giving up goals and avoid to help others because the only thing important to you is the dedication to your selfish goals, I think this podcast would be pretty interesting for you, because I really believe, or I'm sure of it, that many of us are experiencing what it is called an existential vacuum. It feels like an unease or generalized dissatisfaction with one's own life. And we feel completely empty, that our life is completely meaningless.
Okay, so maybe then the podcast is for everyone who experiences all this, maybe with the exception of those people who are completely happy and satisfied with their life.
Yeah, sure. But do you really know anybody like that?
Well, no, not really. I don't think I can speak for everyone, but I think it is fair to generalize, or to say that, at least on a personal level, those people I know on a personal level, I don't think I can identify a single person who doesn't struggle with at least one of these aspects. I think perhaps, well, at least not in our generation, maybe in our grandparents' generation, but no, I think I can safely say that I don't know somebody who is 100% and completely content and who is unaware of human suffering. So yeah.
Okay,
wow.
let's be on the safe side here. Let's imagine that there are people who are the kind of people who constantly experience pleasure and contentment and don't feel confronted with human suffering. And they lead very convenient lives, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have a word of warning for all these people if they are listening now. If you continue listening to this space, to this show, to this podcast, you are taking a great risk. And you could at some point realize that happiness, satisfaction, and self-realization that are paramount in our cultures are not what you think or believe they are. So if I were you, I would go back to my media pleasure. I would push the stop button because this is definitely not the podcast for you, I would say.
For everyone else, we are looking forward to catching up with you here every week in this space. We would love to hear from you on your preferred social media platform or via email. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your suggestions or topics that you might want us to touch on. And yeah, you can find us on Point One, Beyond Human Reality, or SS Lopez, author.
Yes, we do. We hope that you find some community or comfort or just a moment's escape here with us on the Point One podcast.
See you next time.
See you next time. Bye.